Mark McCloskey is the man who was seen brandishing his weapon in front of his giant mansion with his wife as Black Lives Matter protesters were headed toward the mayor's home to protest the fact that she had basically doxed her own constituents in a Facebook video. Now, he wants to defend himself. Of course, there's been a lot of criticism for the fact that he felt the need to arm himself like that against protesters who weren't even protesting him, weren't gonna hurt him or do anything to him and his family. And so here he is speaking to, I don't remember exactly who he's talking to, Cuomo. Here he is speaking to Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, about why he did what he did and how he feels he's the real victim here.
How do you feel about becoming the face of political resistance to the Black Lives Matter movement?
First of all, that's a completely ridiculous statement. I'm not the face of anything opposing the Black Lives Matter movement. I was a person scared for my life who was protecting my wife, my home, my hearth, my livelihood. I was a victim of a mob that came through the gate. I didn't care what color they were. I didn't care what their motivation was. I was frightened, I was assaulted, and I was in imminent fear that they would run me over, kill me, burn my house. And you have to have this in the context of St. Louis, where on June the 2nd of this year, I watched the city burn. I watched the 7-Eleven get smashed in, looted, and burned for 40 minutes on live television with nobody showing up to do anything. And I realized at that time we're on our own. When bad things happen, they unpredictably turn really bad, real fast.
John, I'm always shocked at what people are afraid of while like the actual threat to their lives is like right next to them, right? So like we see how his wife is holding that gun.
Yeah.
And she has her hand on the trigger. I would say that his wife served as like a giant threat to his life there. Look at how she's holding the gun. I can't get over it. It would have been, and I'm glad this didn't happen. Let me just be clear about that. It would have been so easy for her to make a mistake and accidentally pull that trigger and hurt, of course, one of the protesters, but even hurt him.
I think she just pointed at him again. Oh my God, and yeah, look, I haven't talked about this story yet. She's like, it's so casual. Like she's standing like she just finished an escape room and it's a prop that they gave her. And she's like, whatever, gun, I don't care. It's like kill someone, but that's okay. Like you gonna hold up a sign, don't burn down my house. No, he also said, by the way, I was assaulted. I didn't see it. It doesn't look at the guy, he's got his two hands on it. He's not doing it because he thought the place was gonna be burned down. He did it because he wants to do it. Like very few people, and I understand there are some responsible people, they're just literally enthusiasts about guns, but very few people that end up the figureheads of these conservative movements purchase their AR-15 to store in their gun locker and say, that's it. Hope I never need it, but someday it'll be there. No, it's like you're just itching for that situation because it is fundamentally, it's a fantasy that you're living out. You believe crazy things about vigilantes and stuff like that, and you want to be in a position to do something. That's why so many conservatives have thrown themselves into the protests with machetes and bows and cars and all of that. They put themselves in the position to be threatened so that they can lash out because that's what they wanted at the end of the day. That guy, he's not showing up on the news because he's really reluctant to be the face. He could have stayed in his house with the gun. No, he posed because this is what he wants to be seen doing.
He's just trying to protect his hearth, okay?
Yeah, but I'm glad that you mentioned that because nobody says that word and is just a normal person. Like you believe some crazy things about the castle doctrine and all of that stuff if you've ever used the word hearth.
Oh, and by the way, so
that's the only excuse.
I did want to look into, when we first covered this story, I looked into what Missouri's law is on, like, do they have a castle doctrine law? What kind of like self-defense laws do they have on the books? And what the couple did there was illegal, right? Like the self-defense law does not pertain to people who are literally like standing outside of their property and pointing their weapons at people who do not pose as an imminent threat. The protesters were walking by their house. And look, I wanna be fair. I can understand if I happen to live in that mega mansion and I had decided to create this like, incredibly comfortable bubble of a life where I never have to deal with anyone other than people I want to deal with, then yeah, I can understand how watching protesters break down the gate to your gated community could scare you. I'm fine. But here's the difference. I choose not to arm myself in that way because I don't want to preemptively do something that could get people hurt based on my irrational emotions at any given moment, right? And so if I were him and his wife, I would go to my underground bunker, which I'm sure that mansion has, and I would sit it out if I was genuinely scared. But I think you're right, John. He couldn't wait to come out there with his weapon. His wife couldn't wait to make a fool out of herself by holding the gun that way. And if you listen to the audio of the video, you hear the protesters say to one another, like, keep it going, move along, because none of them wanted to get hurt. None of them wanted to cause problems. They wanted to protest the mayor, who, by the way, I think it's also very symbolic that the mayor has chosen to live in this gated community. Like, it's symbolic in what it communicates to constituents, right?
Yeah.
Like, shut off from the public, no access. And the gate didn't save her in this case. The protesters were able to speak their minds and say what they needed to say. One more video from this interview.
To be clear, did anything happen to you or your property?
Did anything happen? Yeah, my life has been ruined.
No, we'll get to that, Mr. McCloskey. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm saying that night, did anything happen to you, your family, or your property?
Yeah, it's called social intimidation. It's called terrorism. Chris, what's the definition of terrorism? To use violence and intimidation to frighten the public. That's what was happening that night. It's what happened to me, and that's the damage I suffered.
What?
Yeah, I mean, the lack of self-awareness is amazing. Amazing.
He was pointing an assault rifle at them. Did they all have assault rifles? Or what? Did they have jets? Did they have tanks? He was pointing a gun at them. And he has nothing, by the way. The question was very easy. Make up something. Say they littered. Say they threw something. You got nothing. They literally did nothing to you.
You know what's terrorism? Terrorism is when you are a mother and you're constantly afraid that your black son is gonna get murdered by cops, either choked to death on the streets in broad daylight, or in I believe it was Philando Castile, saying to the cop, I have a licensed gun in the glove compartment, and then still getting shot and killed in front of your girlfriend and her daughter. I mean, that's terrorism. That's what people have been dealing with for so long in this country, but this man lacks any and all self-awareness. Mr. Personal Injury Attorney, I mean, making himself out to be the victim because protesters, oh my gosh, had the audacity to walk past his house to demonstrate.
But like, I know that we got to move on just super fast. I'll try. Think about the week that we're having as a country. Like in the same week that protesters whose insane radical desire is to have cops stop choking out black males on the streets, have to break into a walled off castle of a community where rich people point assault rifles at them in the same week that the US gets a record number of billionaires. Like, okay, there's two ways to avoid this. You could point an assault rifle at those people, or you could not set up a system where some people live in gated off fantasy lands while the rest of us are left to die to a fatal disease. And if by some miracle we survive that, a lot of us don't have health insurance. Unemployment is absolutely insane. Maybe don't create those two societies and expect that they're never going to brush up against each other. That seems a little bit more realistic. It's not as cool. It's not like an action movie. You don't get to point a gun at it, but maybe don't create those two different worlds and expect that there's never going to be anything bad that comes of it.
So we do have a poll on this story, and it's something that needs to be adjudicated because at this point, it's been clear that women who do these questionable things have been dubbed Karens, but there hasn't been a firm consensus on what male Karens should be called. And so we want you to take part in the TYT poll. You can participate by going to tyt.com/polls/male Karen, male Karen. And the question is, what is the proper way to refer to the male Karen? Is it Chad? Is it Ken? Is it Kevin? Derek? We really want to know what you think. Again, please go to tyt.com/polls/male Karen. There's also a link in the description box below.
When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/tyt, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.